Leon Panetta never shies away from a challenge and has held some of the most influential positions in the United States government. He has worked for 3 presidents, most recently as Secretary of Defense, and through it all, his core principles have never wavered. Give back to the country. Fight for what you believe is right. Make people's lives better. Work hard to find common ground for the betterment of the United States. A son of immigrants who ran a restaurant in Monterey, California during World War II in an area made famous by John Steinbeck's Cannery Row, a young Leon Panetta learned what it took to make it in the New World.
Mother and father were both immigrants from Italy. They believed in the American dream, but my father used to often tell me that a dream is just a dream unless you're willing to work at it, and taught me what a work ethic is all about. My earliest recollections were as a young boy standing on a chair washing glasses in the back of that restaurant. My parents believed that child labor was a requirement in our family.
All the soldiers passing through Monterey on their way to war also left a lasting impression on him by the sacrifice they were making for their country.
A lot of young men were coming through Fort Ord and being trained for the battlefields of either the Pacific or Europe. I can remember as a boy, my parents inviting them to our house for holidays. I thought, these are young men who are going to go to war. As Secretary of Defense, when I had the responsibility to deploy young men and women abroad, I never forgot what I had seen as a young boy in Monterey, California.
Panetta got the political bug early in life and was elected vice president and president of his high school's student body.
We set up a student union, which had never been done at our high school. It was my first experience with constituent services, and it was something I liked to do, and I think it was for that reason that I ultimately got in politics.
He joined the U.S. Army in 1964.
I got out of law school and then I had to go in and serve for 2 years in active duty. I really was operating in the intelligence arena. It taught me an awful lot about the military, the importance of working together on a common mission, the importance of sacrificing, the importance of duty to country. And it also taught me an awful lot about the importance of intelligence and the role that it plays in terms of being able to succeed on the battlefield.
After the Army, Panetta decided to try to get a job in Washington. He visited Capitol Hill and stopped by the office of U.S. Senate Minority Whip Thomas Kuechel.
Tom Kuechel was a Republican from California, but he came out of the Hiram Johnson tradition of progressive politics. There was a willingness of Republicans and Democrats to work together, and it produced landmark legislation in civil rights, in education, in transportation, on almost every area.
Senator Kuechel reinforced the importance of doing the right thing.
I will never forget Senator Kuechel saying, "You're going to be tempted in this town." And I just want you to remember one thing. When you get up in the morning, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. What it really meant was, in the end, you always have to protect your integrity.
That lesson was tested when Panetta was appointed by the Nixon administration as director of the U.S. Office for Civil Rights, where he was responsible for enforcing equal education.
I had been involved in civil rights legislation. I believed it was important to enforce it. Unfortunately, the Nixon administration had made a deal with the South to back off of strong civil rights enforcement. And I had to make a fundamental decision. Do I do what they want me to do and protect my career? Or do I do what I believe is right? And I made the decision to do what I felt was right. And it cost me my job.
In 1975, when Panetta decided to run for Congress, he had the daunting task of running against a 7-term incumbent. Although the election was close, Panetta won and went on to serve 8 terms in Congress.
When I got elected to Congress, Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House, and Bob Michael was the Minority Leader. And both of them, while they had their political differences, they too believed that you work together in order to get things done. In the committees that I was a part of, I always worked with my Republican counterparts, because if you could work together and agree on a piece of legislation, even though you had to compromise, that in the end you had a better chance of getting it passed, and in the end it was probably a better piece of legislation.
From 1989 to 1993, He chaired the House Budget Committee. He authored a wide range of legislation, including the Hunger Prevention Act of 1988, Medicare and Medicaid coverage for hospice care for the terminally ill, and the numerous measures to protect the California coast, including creating the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Panetta also had a gift for creating and passing budgets.
Budgets are not just about numbers. They're about priorities. What do you really care about? What should we be investing in for the future?
His work as chairman of the House Budget Committee, and after leaving Congress as the director of the Office of Management and Budget for the Clinton administration, made him instrumental in helping to create a balanced budget.
I was a part of every major budget summit as chairman of the Budget Committee. There were tough negotiations, but it paid off because we were ultimately able to balance the federal budget, not only balance it, but develop a surplus. It taught me that if you work hard enough and work with others hard enough, you can get almost anything accomplished.
As important as his work on the budget was, President Clinton wanted him to be his chief of staff.
I was invited to go up to Camp David. I told the president, I'm much more valuable to you as O&B director. He said, Leon, you could be the greatest O&B director in the history of the country. But if the White House is falling apart, nobody's going to remember you.
Panetta brought order and focus to White House operations and policymaking.
The most important thing for me was my Army experience because I had to create a chain of command. And so I basically blocked off, this is the chief of staff, these are the deputies, these are the responsibilities. Before I became chief of staff, you'd go into a meeting with Bill Clinton in the Oval Office, and sometimes there'd be 40 or 50 or 60 people in the room, all wanting to be there, all talking, and nothing getting done.
In 2009, President Obama tapped Panetta to become the head of the CIA. Every day he went to work, he was reminded of the CIA's predecessor, the OSS.
You walk into the lobby of the CIA, there's a huge statue of Wild Bill Donovan, who represented the kind of spirit of let's go get them. They did whatever they felt was necessary in order to get the information, accomplish the mission, and do what was necessary to protect this country. That's what the OSS was all about. We've come a long way from the OSS, but in many ways the spirit of what the OSS was all about is at the heart of what the CIA is all about today.
As CIA director, Panetta quickly realized that its operational effectiveness was just as important as its skill in gathering intelligence, particularly in the war against terrorism.
We were not fighting a nation state. We were fighting a group of terrorists who were basically operating on their own. They had a leadership operation that we had to target in order to really undermine their effectiveness. And to do that required good intelligence, it required assets on the ground, but it also required an operational skill that was essential to being able not only to find and fix them, but to finish them.
To help fight the terrorists, Panetta found a collaborator who shared his vision of combining intelligence with special operations, just as the OSS did during World War II.
Bill McRaven, who received the Donovan Award last year, was someone that I really developed a close relationship with. When I was at the CIA, he was the one I asked to put together the operation that went after bin Laden. When the president asked me, I said, Mr. President, I have tremendous confidence in the ability of our special forces to get this job done. And thank God, ultimately, the president made the right decision. It was a gutsy decision. And we conducted the mission. It was tough, 150 miles at night into Pakistan, not knowing what they were going to find. There were challenges during the whole mission, but in the end, they accomplished it and sent a very clear message to the world that nobody attacks this country and gets away with it.
In 2011, President Obama named Panetta as Secretary of Defense, and the Senate confirmed him unanimously. As Secretary of Defense, he led the effort to develop a new defense strategy. He also got to put his budget skills to work.
When I went in, I was handed a number of $500 billion to reduce the defense budget over 10 years. And so we got both the military and civilian leadership to do something that was pretty unusual. Sit in a room, work together to develop a strategy for the future that could guide us in terms of our budget. And we did. Its key elements were to recognize that we were going to be leaner, but we could be agile and quickly deployable and on the cutting edge of technology. We would rebalance our forces to the Pacific as well as the Middle East. We would maintain a presence elsewhere through rotational deployments. We would be able to fight more than one enemy at one time and have that capability. And lastly, we would invest in technology, invest in space, invest in special forces, invest in cyber, invest in those capabilities that we would need in order to confront the challenges of the future. We've got to be agile enough in our defense capability to meet every one of those challenges and to maintain the strongest military on the face of the earth.
Having been inspired by President Kennedy to live a life of public service, Panetta created the Panetta Institute for Public Policy with his wife Sylvia.
The whole purpose of the Panetta Institute is to try to inspire young people to lives of public service. We have got to inspire a new generation of leaders to be interested in Washington, to believe that you can get things done, to believe that it is important to give back to this country. If we can do that, we'll have a better chance to have a democracy that will be there for our children and for their children, and that will ensure a government truly of, by, and for all people.
From humble beginnings as a son of immigrants to the halls of power, Leon Panetta has always done what he believes is right and has never sacrificed his integrity. Panetta dedicated his new autobiography, Worthy Fights, to his wife, his sons, and to the memory of his parents, Carmelo and Carmelina, whose love, support, and sacrifice gave him the opportunity to live the American dream and a better life. He has helped others to live the American dream too, passing along the gift his parents gave him, and reminding us that preserving our democracy for the generations to follow is a worthy fight.
I'm honored to pay tribute to Leon Panetta, who richly deserves this year's Donovan Award. Leon has the unique distinction of being my successor in two organizations, CIA and the Defense Department. Agencies critically important to America's national defense. Agencies that present, to put it mildly, interesting management challenges for those uninitiated to the way they do business. At CIA, Leon continued the effective fusion of intelligence and military capabilities, special ops especially. It has delivered a series of lethal blows to al-Qaeda's leadership, culminating, of course, with the final dispatch of Osama bin Laden. At every level, from strategic analysis to targeting support, CIA officers have never worked more closely with their military partners. A remarkable shift from the situation when I was Director of Central Intelligence. Due to the good personal relationship I had as Defense Secretary with Leon, who, let's face it, is impossible not to like, we were able to make the misbegotten D&I structure actually work. Having said that, as a career CIA guy, I appreciated Leon's fierce defense of his agency's imperatives and its people when necessary. Recall that right after the 2008 election, Leon wrote an op-ed suggesting President-elect Obama retain me as Secretary of Defense. So when President Obama asked for my recommendation for a successor, I returned the favor. Leon took over the Pentagon just as the post-9/11 surge in defense spending was coming to an end, and the word sequestration entered the Washington vocabulary. After a year and a half back in Monterey, I assume Leon has forgiven me by now. And like everyone else, I'm looking forward to reading his book. At least I hope so. Congratulations, Leon, for this great honor, and my best wishes to you and Sylvia.